Good day to you, YouTube. Today I'm going to be reading an excerpt from my new manifesto. The chapter we'll be covering is called Dual Nature. Man's nature is unique to common science. His nature is not a simple matter of being, unlike a common beast. He is defined by himself, not nature nor God. Destiny is at his fingertips, along with the ability to create his own imaginings. Man, and by man I refer to humanity in the broader sense, is creator. Man is awareness. Man is empathy and balance. Through his eyes and metaconscious perception is justice and liberty seen, and with first this sight can imbalances or injustices be rectified that would otherwise dominate. The reality of nature largely apart from man is largely apart from higher consciousness. It is this reason that man himself is in turmoil, because at this moment he is split between the common animals unconsciousness, what would undoubtedly be dubbed the collective unconscious by Zhang, and the higher metaconscious state, or superior self-awareness. Our dual nature causes conflict within us, and to truly awaken and titillate one's mental capabilities by questioning the universe as we find it can take a great deal of courage and fortitude. It also goes against the less advanced half of our nature, which is still, sadly, shrouded in unconsciousness, blind dogmatism, and egocentrism. It may appear to many of us that this inner duality and turmoil is transitional, especially if we consider the potential applications of our higher consciousness, which really is an open door of endless possibilities. Perhaps most importantly of all, our higher consciousness gives us the ability to transcend the Darwinian and often cruel struggles of nature as we see them, justly as they exist. Yet in spite of our higher awareness, we still inhabit a world rife with cruelty, inequality, and brutality that parallels the greater scope of nature. Perhaps this is due to our metaconscious awareness being somewhat in the early stages of its development. It's impossible to speculate with any accuracy on the exact time and place when man, or whatever one of his ancestors, awoke to notice they existed, or that they could think. What seems clearer is that awakening to consciousness is a gradual process, and that some of us today have achieved higher levels of conscious awareness, creativity, empathy, or other higher human abilities. Some of us exhibit less consciousness, perhaps in a blissful ignorance, to only awaken slightly when faced with an issue that affects ourselves directly. But until then, unquestioning of very real social issues, as if beyond the periphery. So in realizing what awakens some of us, it's a fair comment to speculate that consciousness itself did appear in reaction to some problem or challenge in need of being overcome. It's also a fair comment to say the superior consciousness of human beings is almost limitless as to what issues, either logistical, scientific, economic, or medical, that it has the ability to overcome. Metaconsciousness changes everything. Skeptics may argue that our superior awareness is by chance, an evolutionary fluke that serves little in the way of collective purpose. They may take it even further and say conscious awareness is awareness of greater suffering, and therefore it is better to be less aware or empathic. I'll now take a second to refute those points which I expect to be common criticisms. Firstly, if we take the obvious route that enhanced awareness in many of us comes from being faced with an issue, and that consciousness provides answers to such issues, then we should obviously see our consciousness as a positive, and therefore not something to be disregarded or considered mere fluke. Instead, the next huge step in the evolutionary process. If a monkey knows a nut is encased within a cell, it may use a rock to gain access to its contents. In the same vein, man can use his meta-awareness to solve a wide array of different issues. On the second argument, yes, it's true. Greater awareness of problems like social issues may cause greater suffering and distress initially, and can overwhelm us emotionally. But without first developing this greater awareness, we lack the ability to change any issues that cause suffering and unhappiness to start with. In layman's terms, we must first be intimately aware there is an issue before we can expect to solve it. Our metaconsciousness is the most important thing we have. Even an evolutionary biologist should be able to see truth in that statement, and that it is intrinsically linked to so many higher emotional states and levels of awareness, such as our ability to feel shame or guilt, disgust, or feel pride, righteousness, or feel we are experiencing beauty. It is also that essential key to creation, self-determination, superior problem solving, as well as the driving force behind desire for peace, fairness, and freedom. It is most importantly the thing that truly helps us distinguish right from wrong and gives us free agency and the ability to override basic biological programming, such as the fight or flight response, or the desire to have sex. So, in evolutionary terms, our comprehension and ability to even read these lines is the next big thing. We've passed the threshold away from being defined by genetics towards conscious choice and conscious evolution. For those of us conscious enough not only to understand but feel these words resonate inside of them, we must somewhere know the next step already, if only subconsciously. To enhance the human consciousness is the key. This should be done first individually, by stamping out our harmful precognitive side, and then done collectively on an evolutionary level, at the very least done in a way conducive to social evolution, and at the very most conducive to actual biological evolution, in a way so as to expand our general cognitive ability. The first step toward embracing our higher metaconscious state is completely rejecting the shallow and most animal of outlooks, egocentrism. The common animal doesn't have awareness of the feelings of other animals. It may have a primal desire to protect its own offspring, put there by its genes, but it doesn't have cognitive ability, a broad sense of fairness, or question the emotional well-being of other animals, let alone ask scientific questions on the nature of the universe, or relating to its own being for that matter. The non-cognitive animal is therefore a wholly egocentric being. This animal egocentrism is clearly the result of a much less developed sense of awareness, less developed empathic abilities, and less conscious brain overall. It must be said that it is only by our level of conscious functioning that we gain a broader insight into the nature of reality and into ourselves. But the unaware animal egocentric side of our nature is still very dominant in both ourselves and society. As human beings, we have a responsibility to enhance the greater spectrum of insight and transcend the self-limiting animal egocentrism. To aspire to strive by higher ideals raises humanity above the cruel struggles of nature, and we should always be aiming to improve ourselves by stamping on any sense of egocentric thinking as or when it arrives. I know I'm asking a lot, but it will be worth it. As a collective embrace of our consciousness will truly lead us to great and new places. When we examine ourselves, as we have done thus far, we can see the two sides of our nature are naturally opposed. The animal egocentrism, blissfully unaware of greater happenings, is akin to being in a sleep state, which wholly goes against our broader and higher metaconscious level awareness. This creates the aforementioned state of inner turmoil, which truly is a battle that not only fights for the heart of us as individuals, but for the future of all humanity. And whether we ascend to the next level of evolutionary development collectively, or fall prey to the ever increasing assaults on our higher nature by an increasingly materialistic and egocentric global society that pushes many of us away from our higher aspects that we should truly so readily embrace, and towards more self-limiting, egocentric lifestyles. Today's societal organisation hinges largely on egocentric mindsets rather than ones of higher consciousness, and the result is suffering intensified, along with a society that obviously parallels the cruelty of the struggles of nature. In a large part responsible for broad societal suffering is the top-down hierarchical nature of today's mode of societal organisation, something which in itself is deeply egocentric and completely illegitimate. There simply can be little that is more egocentric than one individual attempting to dominate and lord it over another. Such a model of organisation lends itself both to the super-inflated self-worth of some in comparison to others, as well as the subjugation of some on behalf of others. Such a system as the one we sadly inhabit today disregards the higher aspects of our human nature and spares scant regard for free will and the meta-consciousness. It is a system at war with our humanity and attempts nothing less than to reduce us to less than the sum of our true value. It wishes to put man on par with beasts or machines and strangle the higher consciousness out of him. The other most harmful aspect of the egocentric society is the territorial aspect, the idea of legitimizing domination over the material world by way of proclaimed ownership is something our society so readily accepts, yet is based on an abstraction, backed not by any form of conscious reasoning, but the mere force used on behalf of the egocentric parties involved. But like hierarchy among humans, it cannot be in any way legitimized or morally substantiated. It's clear to evolutionary biologists that the origins of ownership can likely be traced to our pre-cognitive ancestors, especially seeing as the territorial imperative is a very common behavioral drive among non-cognitive animals. The reason the territorial imperative is so harmful is that it's a source of constant conflict and dispute in both the animal and human world. Pointless conflict and dispute in our own case. If we looked at this matter honestly and without evoking any primitive, territorial or defensive drives, we'd see the idea of controlling something other than our body or mind as an absurdity. We'd see that fences labels, laws, or flags are as futile as an animal marking its supposed territory. Together, these two forementioned social issues create a far larger single issue that at current enslaves most of all humanity. The anti-cognitive animal society among humans, which could also be called the societally engineered social struggle and competition between man, which from now on I will simply refer to as the struggle. Every single day, the common person in the global hegemonic society is locked into a seemingly endless state of struggle against others competing for both the social power of hierarchical rank and territorial possession. Many egocentric, animal-minded people sadly embrace this struggle. Work hard, they tell us, and earn our freedoms. They tell us, look out for ourselves as nobody else will. To cling on to possessions and partake in the hoarding of them. They say human nature is bad and that there is no hope for certain sectors of society who will always be destined as unproductive bottom feeders. They tell us to close off from the suffering of others. They teach us to feel good when another person fails at something, because that means we are better than them. They tell us a plethora of lies to keep us asleep, to keep us from conscious awareness, to keep us from ascending the struggle. We must halt their lies with truth. We must rise up and overcome the perpetual Darwinian struggle between mankind that they wish to inflict upon us. The lies cannot be overlooked for any longer. All that comes from the collective unconscious state of mind is turmoil, both inside and out, which man must embrace consciousness to free himself from. Ignorance is a short-term solution to avoid dealing with real-world problems, as well as questions relating to existence. The time has now come for man to ask such questions, and for man to awaken completely. He must be jolted awake, with great surprise if necessary, by some form of guerrilla ontology, and his defence of the unjustifiable and unreasonable must be exposed for what it is: a pre-cognitive defence of the primal brain, its harmful biological drives, and the rejection of consciousness and higher truths. The primary defence mechanism man has in retaining the dominance of the lower or unconscious brain is dogmas and pseudo-moralities, the subject of the next chapter.